but I think it should get there.
I don't know how to get to the thing to put in the.
Oh, if you go to, are you logged into Accelevents?
Yeah.
If you click the stage,
Yeah.
Here that'll have all the sessions. Been living in there.
We're here. Hi, happy World IA Day.
Oh, I didn't know you didn't see me yet. Hello. Happy World IA Day with the founder of World IA Day. We're so excited.
We're streaming.
All right.
So first things first, I am on a different day than the video that you just watched. So I want to acknowledge that first, in case you were like, wow, that was a really fast costume change. So just so you all know, that video was available to all World IA Day locations, and it was submitted in advance because it needed to be translated into all the different languages. So yeah, but I'm really excited to join you guys this morning. And I just wanted to thank the organizers of this event, not just for having me, which I'm really excited to be here, but also just for putting this all together. This has been an incredibly difficult year. And the fact that these volunteers all put their time in away from their families to get this thing done for you guys, it's really amazing. So thank you to everyone who's spending the time with us this morning, and just a moment to say thank you again to the organizing committee and also the global organizing committee. And with that, if anybody has questions, I'd love to take them. Megan, I know you have a couple.
I have some questions stored up from you. I will talk to you all day if no one asks any themselves, but I know also you have a question for us.
Yeah, I'm going to set up the poll. So
cool.
Let me set that up real quick.
Yeah, so where you guys can go in the upper right, there's a polls tab alongside the chat. If you click there, you're going to see a poll that Abby has set up to get a pulse on a really thought-provoking question based on her talk. So I'm excited to see the results of this.
This is exciting because Accelevents doesn't let you come in early. So I have to copy and paste 5 radio buttons while on live video to goodness knows how many people.
Well, the good thing is people can use this time if they have some questions brewing in their mind. They can navigate to the Q&A tab in the upper right and submit those questions now, because Abby's going to answer all the questions that come in either live or written after this session is over, because she's wonderful and generous with her time. So use this time to get curious and start thinking of some good questions for Abby, the IA.
I'm saving a poll, you guys. This is happening. Okay. Ooh, launch. Ready?
Ready. Let's do it. Cool. And so it should pop up on your screen. We have a new poll here. So which part of your sense-making self might need strengthening to reach your unique intention? The head, the heart, the hands, or the full body needing strengthening, or none if you're plenty strong all around?
So Megan, I think there's going to be a bit of a delay here. So let's get into some questions.
Okay, cool. So I have for myself, you may know my background as a documentarian. So I was really interested when you were talking about the way that IA and information changes over time, sort of like, do you have any philosophy of what it is that we owe to sense makers that are coming after us in terms of documenting our processes and our decision making?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I've been thinking a lot about that question recently, because it does feel like everything's moving so fast. I redid my website last summer with a team of folks, and it was really an exercise in understanding just like the detritus of the internet. And I've run into like a lot of situations where, like, you know, I wrote a post 10 years ago that was in response to somebody else's post, and they've changed blogging platforms and that URL was never remapped to another. So I think that it really is like a question that we have to start asking ourselves, because it's almost like naturally it will erase itself. So we're like fighting against time. And you know that. And so I feel like for yourself and like for your individual body of work, I think that that's really where it starts. And I think that that's not just about the community. I think that's also just about like the pride of your own work. Like I would really love to see more people take the time to write about their work, not when they're just trying to convince somebody to give them another job. And I see that as like the primary time where people are working on case studies, or their website is like when they're looking for a job. And I feel like that really cuts off your ability to really get curious, because you're almost trying to make yourself into a model that you're seeking, you know, to fill for other people at that point. Like I was talking to somebody recently who said they feel like they go and put on a different costume for every job interview, because they haven't really figured out like who they actually are as a practitioner and like what it is that makes them them. And I think like spending the time on that and doing the introspection is just really key to the documentation part, because if you don't know like what it is about yourself that you're preserving or about your work, it's really hard to preserve everything. Like you can't keep it all. I've learned that.
Really
There are
true.
binders, and I used to keep every project I had in binders. And I think I moved them like through 7 apartments before I was finally like, I have all the digital files. I know the binders are nice, but it's like it's baggage, at some point. So it's like having your own intention about what you're documenting and why. And I think like the idea that you would think about it as a gift to future sense makers, like, I mean, goodness, I hope all of us have careers that we feel like would be worthy of people in the future looking back on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like, yeah, that all day long. Everybody document your work, share your work, be proud of your work, even if it gets erased by other people like a year and a half later, because everything gets erased a year and a half later. So yeah.
That's great advice. I'm so guilty of doing that, only really documenting my practices on the job hunt. So it's good advice.
Do it as a celebration. You know that moment where you're like, I'm done, this project, woo! Like take the screenshots,
Yeah.
write the paragraph, do it right then. You'll remember it better then than you ever will in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later. It's so hard to reverse engineer that stuff. So
True.
time.
Cool. Okay. I loved your one of their smaller stories at the end about I think it was the theater company and like that schedule hanging on the wall. And how that like just sort of like sparked your curiosity on using a really original framework to achieve the job. And I'm curious about like how we find that balance between following a framework that's like tried and true and thorough and like is in the language of the people that we're like convincing or collaborating with also like leaving space to be truly original where we ought to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's always kind of the drama of white labels, right? Like once you have something and you put a label on it saying it's for everybody to do anything, you've kind of like invited people to use it that way. And I think that in a lot of cases that's really good. Like there's a lot of tried and true frameworks that why would you reinvent writing a recipe? Like why would you do that? We know how to do that. We are pretty good at it. There are things that we've like agreed to, like this is a good format. And then you run into as a user times when people are like, no, my blog is special. My cookbook is special. I'm not going to write a recipe that way. And we all hate it as users because it's like, what are you doing? Why are you messing with my framework? So there's like this balance of originality for your intention and also familiarity with the users. You don't want to just be special to be special. And that can count when I say users as like your stakeholders, the people that you're working with, as much as your end users. So I think with frameworks, that's sort of something that you have to balance. And with the way that I think about them is that every framework is special and they all come from somewhere. And often that somewhere is a variety of places. Sometimes it's a best practice that I've used before or I've seen that I think is interesting that I want to try. But there's not many times where it's just straight out of the box and I just use it. I think that like putting in an extra level of thought makes a difference to just like your ability to authentically facilitate that moment, to like really say like as the facilitator, I thought about what I wanted to get out of this. Because to me, like if I go to a workshop and somebody's like, I read about this framework in a book and I think it'll work. That's like less interesting than I've thought about our problem and I read a couple books and a blog and I've come up with this thing and this is how I want to do it and this is the result I want to get out of it. What do you think? Should we do this? That to me is way more interesting. But I think that like maybe time gets in the way in a lot of people's cases.
Yeah.
It's like, and that repeatable magic thing, I'm guilty of it too. When I'm moving fast and like, what do you need? You need a controlled vocabulary. Here's a format, but there are times when I've caught myself and I've done that and it's been a disservice to my team, instead of just like taking the moment to think about it and be like, okay, what is the right framework in this moment instead of just the one that I think I should use right now.
Yeah. Don't create another shitstorm, I guess.
God, should storm. I don't want to live there ever again.
Cool. One more question I had for you. I loved you calling out optimizing for joy when you were talking about the markers with your son. And something that I think I struggle with, perhaps other content folks struggle with, is like how to make the business case for that, like how to convince stakeholders of doing that for the user.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's a hard one. Like, okay, so first of all, I want to talk about optimizing for joy because I realized that is actually something that I heard the first time from Christina Woodkey, and I feel like it's like a mantra. So I wanted to give her a quick hello. I just feel like when you're talking about someone's intention for the thing for their business, and you want to inspire something like joy for users, you have a really long road to hoe between like, we've got a business and want to sell a thing, do a thing, to like, we want to inspire joy. And what I see is a lot of companies try to like pretend to be over here in that joy space by marketing joyfully. And I, as a consumer, I see right through that. I think a lot of people really see right through that. So I don't know. I feel like honestly, my gut is joyful employees. Yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go with joyful employees. I would say like, if you really wanted to inspire joy for your end users, you would have to make sure that there was some level of joy in the actual workplace. And
Yeah.
man, we all have workplaces that don't always feel joyful. So yeah, I would say like that would be really important. It's really hard to pick an intention for somebody else. And I think that we have to remember that when we're working on businesses. Because unless you're the CEO or a C-level person who gets that kind of vote, it's not your thing. It's not your thing.
Sure.
And your job is to serve their thing. And so making users joyful, it's like your job to get that into their intention. And that's really hard to do. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying know that that's what you're trying to do. Because if you just go to work every day saying, oh gosh, I hope that they want users to feel joy today, and all of your presentations hinge on we should do this because users will be more joyful, there's going to be a brick wall there. And that's unfortunate, but I think that has been my experience. Like I think it's all about that like mental model thing again. You have to really like get into their minds, and then you need to get into your own mind about like, why do you want joy for users in that particular construct? And then you need to compare those models and go like, what is the brick wall that's standing between these two intentions being aligned?
Yeah.
And somebody's got to take that first brick down. It can be you. Sometimes when you take the first brick down, they take a brick down, like sometimes they doggedly go, no, I'm not taking any bricks down. My way or the highway. And that's just, that happens too.
Yeah.
So,
and at least
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let people show you who they are. Let businesses show you who they are, and then judge them that way.
I think that's a great answer, because I think if you struggle, or if I struggle with being idealistic, I think it's all about like the joyful employee experience is like allowing the space for them to see that, to see what you're pushing for, even if you don't get them 100% of the way there, like helping them meet you somewhere in the middle. So,
well, and make sure that everybody understands the definition of a joyful workplace. I think that there's like, I've read too many articles that equate the millennial joyful workplace as having kombucha on tap. I could give a crap if you have kombucha on tap. I want to feel valued. I want to feel like I have a path. I want to feel like the work I do matters to the business, and that my coworkers know the value of my skill set. Those are the things that make people feel like they're in a joyful workplace. It's like knowing that you're doing something bigger than yourself that you can really get behind. That like, if you run into somebody on the weekend and they go, oh, what have you been working on? You can be like, oh man, I've been working on this really cool thing and I'm really jazzed about it. Not like, and we've all been there, we've all had that moment, or we will have that moment. So,
okay.
Yep.
Cool. Let's check out the poll results, see how that's going.
Oh my goodness, Megan.
Well, no one is 100% strengthened in everything. A lot of people have one or the other.
I can't see. Oh, I have to answer it myself so I can see the results.
Oh, answer. Well, we know your answer because you told us, but answer it and then you can see the full stats. You can be surprised.
I'm picking hard. Oh my.
Interesting, right?
Wow. Oh, this is okay. 34% that are in the hands camp. Awesome.
That's me.
That's I feel most confident in my ability to teach. So that's awesome.
Help us.
This is cool. Thank you for answering.
No, this was such a good idea to have this as an interactive portion. Do you have like maybe a standout piece? I know you just gave us a whole talk with advice about strengthening the hands, but maybe like knowing that most folks are identifying this camp, like a piece of advice you'd want to share with that context.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So yesterday, I was emailing with somebody I'm writing a new book about diagrams. So that's number one. I should say that. I'm writing a book about diagrams. And this person who is a reader of my email list reached out to share a diagram that they were working on and was talking about, like, how to make diagrams good. And we were talking about the value or I guess, what is the relative value of the aesthetic quality of a diagram or a framework. And this person, I really think, like, genuinely came in with the mental model that visual polish equals better diagram, more awesome diagram you should show to other people. And they actually shared a diagram with me that they felt was like a not pretty diagram that they had made. And I found it to be very clear and very useful. So I had this exchange with them that I think would be valuable for people to hear if they're kind of struggling in the hands camp, is like, it's much less about graphic design and aesthetics than it is about boxes and arrows. And if you can just look at it that way and sort of like let go of the mental model of not being an artist and not being a designer, I find that, like, a lot of people end up in my mentoring sessions with that exact thing. I'm not an artist, I'm not a visual designer, and the things I make are ugly. And to you, I say, stop using gradients, stop using the defaults, use just black lines, arrows, boxes, words, just simple, simple, simple. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be understandable. So yeah, for you hands people, that's my biggest advice. Simple, simple, simple.
That's awesome. Maybe also just being brave to put it out there and go first as well.
Totally.
I got some more questions from the audience. I think we can get through all of these. So can we talk about developing frameworks? Is this like looking in your toolbox and taking a guess at what tools will work best for a specific problem, but allowing for change when we don't get the answers we need?
Yeah, so I think that that's exactly what it is. It's like being ready to try out new frameworks and to kind of collect frameworks of other people's, even from different industries. Like that one from the Shakespeare Festival just blew my mind. I was like, y'all, until that diagram, I seriously would not think that a matrix like that was a diagram. Yeah. But now I'm like, oh, it totally is, which means that spreadsheets are diagrams. And that's just like, all of a sudden we've blown everyone's mind, and it's like, that's so much. So I really feel like when you're developing frameworks, look everywhere. Like, look at what people are actually using. Look at the terrible interfaces that people are using in doctors' offices and dentists' offices. Look at the interfaces that cashiers are using in grocery stores. Because if you do that over time, you're going to see all sorts of new things. You're going to see all sorts of little Post-its that they've taped to their monitor that's like a little diagram of how things actually work on their computer screen. You're going to see all of that really fun kind of detritus of people making more sense. And I just find it to be really inspiring for my actual work. Like, I cut a maze off of the back of a cereal box yesterday morning, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to use it for something, because I just like the idea of a maze really struck me as like a framework that I've never thought about kind of positioning myself in, like as a writer, to use that as like a metaphor, maybe to make a diagram that includes a maze. So don't be surprised when my new book has a diagram that is based on a maze from a cereal box. And you guys might be the only ones that know that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Got another one here. Let's see. Can you speak a little more to committing to your intention, even if that means that the process or product does not make everyone happy? I think that's so important, but hard to do.
Oh, it's so hard to do. And I think, Megan, it reminds me of your question, like you have to make sure that your intention, when you say your intention, you have to make sure that like the waterfall of intentions that leads to yours in an organization, if that's what you're talking about, your work intention is lined up all the way up and all the way down. And that's really hard people work. So I think like, know that the being intentional is not just work on yourself, it's work on yourself with other people. And like the alignment of those intentions it's hard to do. And it's hard to do without telling people that you're doing it. Like
That's true.
You can't just sneaky get through a major mental model adjustment with another group of people. You have to kind of at some point be like, hey, I'm coming clean. We're in vastly different places, and I'm going to make an attempt to like bring us to a place we can agree on, but we're in vastly different places. And I find people either don't want to have that moment, and they just keep pushing on like, well, but maybe one day we'll have the same intention if just I can be the best thing at this organization they've ever seen. And it just
That's
never
so real.
yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, I think that's the major lesson, right? Is like, to be intentional, you have to know what your actual context is. You have to know what your actual resources are. You have to know how much time you actually have and how much energy you can actually give. I mean, you know this as a volunteer organizer, it's all about that intention. It's like,
Yeah.
if you let yourself, you could work on it forever, right? And we all can't actually do that, you know.
We might
Yeah.
have tried to do that, but
Yeah. I've been there.
this is a good one here. Have there been times when you've gotten stuck when trying to make sense of something? And what are some things that you do to break through?
Oh my gosh, you guys. I almost started this Q&A by saying, like, did anybody else cry themselves to sleep last night? Like, of course things don't make sense all the time, every day. I run into things that don't make sense literally every single day. I am frustrated by it every single day. It is an active process. There is no like, sitting in a field full of understanding over here. Like, nope, misunderstandings, bad decisions, constant mistakes, iteration on myself, on my work, on the words that come out of my mouth. Oh, it's all the time. It's forever. So yeah, I mean, like, this talk, I wrote it for me, you know? I mean, I wrote it for you guys, and I'm really happy that I got to share it, but like, this was a big moment for me to talk to me about what's been going on, and like my practice and my career. And like, I haven't always been real about that with myself, and I'm getting real with myself about it. And I'm seeing that like, there's so much more clarity when you're not hiding in all of the fear of all the ambiguity. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's really like, ugh, it's, it's, yeah, it hurts when people ask questions like that, because it makes me feel like the mental model is really that like some people get out of it. It's not true. Some people don't confront it, but nobody gets out of it.
Awesome. All right. Got one here. How do you think it's best to inspire your employer or even coworkers to aspire to optimize for joy? I feel like because I'm constantly running into a wall with many coworkers because we have our own clients in most cases, and a lot of we have always done it this way in response.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that like, you got to get into those mental models. Like, there's a really interesting book by Indy Young, if y'all haven't read it, called Mental Models. There's another one called Radical Empathy that's a follow-up to that book, also by Indy Young. Those books will blow your mind in terms of how to get into a place where you actually feel like you know what's going on upstairs for other people. You still won't know what to do about it all the time, but you'll at least kind of grasp the understanding that it's chaos up there for everybody, just like it is for you. And so, yeah, having that like ability to reconcile those things. I feel like with your coworkers, I think it really does come down to understanding and being, empathetic towards them, and like understand a lot of that story that I told about my IHOP work being erased. I feel like that's a really big lesson to a lot of people inside of organizations, because sometimes when you stay long enough, people erase things that you do right in front of you, and that can build sort of like this disharmony. And a lot of times as a change maker, especially as a consultant change maker coming into organizations, I find those people and they are deeply dissatisfied with the status quo, but the status quo is kind of what they helped to build. And it's really hard to reconcile those two things. And so I feel like you need a lot of kindness. You need to spend a lot of time with people. You need to have a lot of conversations where you hear their side of the story. Like, I feel like a lot of people aren't given that chance to just like describe the mess as they see it, and instead they're kind of like told about it. Oh, this thing's a mess. And they're like, well, I worked on that 3 years ago and it wasn't a mess back then, but now it is because so-and-so went and didn't tag their stuff and no, 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 no. And if you hear all that stuff and you reconcile all of it and you bring it to, an appropriate floor where it can be dealt with and worked through, that's how you can figure out if you can have the same intention as people enough to be authentic about it and move forward.
Awesome. I see that coming across in a lot of these answers, the authenticity from yourself and then inviting that authenticity from others for like the heart and the head framework.
So hard. So hard to do.
All right. Unfortunately, I'm getting a prompt. We are coming up on the end of time. So this is going to be the last question. We're seeing a lot of questions about talking about the relationship between process and framework, and any thoughts on how to articulate the differences between those two with stakeholders.
Oh, yes. Make sure that your process is verbs and that your like frameworks are nouns, and just know what you're doing before you think about what you're making. What are we doing? Are we trying to create a vision for a thing, or are we trying to propose an actual solution to a thing? Those are very different, but sometimes the same framework can be prescribed for both of those things. And without having that sort of like verb conversation up first, like with your process side, you can end up with the wrong framework, and you can end up with something that feels forced. Like I do hear a lot of times, gosh, people are just like, well, what we need is a customer journey map. And then you spend 5 minutes talking about it and you realize like, man, you actually need like a new e-commerce taxonomy, and it has nothing to do with the journey map at all, but they just grab onto like a shiny object. So I feel like that's something else about the swiftness of our field and our industry, is just lots of frameworks moving really fast and people grasping and just trying like, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. So yeah, thinking about like, what is it I'm trying to do? And then having that moment with yourself of looking at all of the framework options, and then start from that blank canvas and make your own. It's just boxes and arrows.
I love the simplicity. All right, I have one final question we're trying to sneak in the last 2 minutes time. How do you carve out the time to keep understanding and sense making when your team and your client is also in a should mindset and don't believe the sense making should take that long? I want to know this too.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes. Estimation. Get really good at the art of estimation. You need to be able to tell people how long the things that you are actually going to do are going to take, even if the thing you're going to do is incredibly ambiguous. So yes, I needed to have a conversation in an ongoing way about the fact that I was going to have to go back to Portland yet again and cost more money every single time it happened. And that was very unfortunate. Like, I wish that it could have been a time where I could have said, hey, up front, this is what it's going to take. That was a moment when I couldn't do that. But if I didn't have the flexibility in the actual arrangement, that would have felt really frictionful. So I feel like you need to know what the context is, know the working environment, and plan as far out as the time scale of your organization will allow you to, and try to project out what you're actually doing so that people can go, wait a second, what is that thing and why is it taking you so long? And when they say that, just be like, well, I'm open to ideas on how we could do it faster, but this is the way I'm going to do it unless you have better ideas. I mean, they can't make you, all they can do is push back on timelines. And like, at that point, it's like, okay, what are we going to cut from my workload? I feel like people are not transparent about what their workload actually is. And so it's kind of like this mystical thing that everyone's trying to get into, but like, you don't know how much space people have. I when I was managing project at Etsy, I would always ask like, okay, what's the timeline that you can give me? Like, how much time do you actually have for me this week? And I think that enough people don't ask that question of like, what is the element of time here? So yeah, I think get better at estimation and timelines and talking to people about what things take, instead of it being like magic. Like, do not have the verb be do the UX. Please stop doing that. It doesn't do anybody a service, especially people you're trying to teach along the way that you work with.
Great. Well, we are up at time. Hopefully we don't get cut off on the platform, but I thank you so much, Abby, for your time. This was wonderful. Up next for everyone else here, we have workshops coming up, so everyone can get excited to check those out. You'll have the one you're registered for. And I can't wait to see